Miles, there's a lot of personnel changes, but I think the rotation is probably where there's the most questions. So in terms of heading into fall ball, how do you plan on sorting out what is your top four starting pitchers at least?
Yes.
Sorting that out.
Yeah, good question. Same way we did last year, really. Last year it was really up in the air, and we didn't know about the rotation and where the pieces were all going to fill in. And same thing this year. There's some really good pieces out there. Andrew Mozziello had a tremendous summer in the Cape Cod League. So did Adam Meyer. He comes in as a transfer. He had a tremendous summer out in the Cape Cod League. Colby Summers having a closer return, fantastic. Matt Dallas played over for Coach Blunt over at Lane Community College. Really had a tremendous summer. He's got a power arm, and he's a real athletic kid. Looks like he'll be a back-end bullpen type guy. And then I like a lot of the young kids that we had last year out there pitching as well, between Gordon and Aon and Britton, and those guys, they're really good. And there's some other kids that are in the mix now too, transfer-wise, that look like they've got huge potential for us. So it was a good day, good first day for us to be out there with the guys.
Sabia, a starting guy for you, a bullpen guy?
No, he'd be a bullpen type guy. Yep.
What in terms of Colby, you mentioned specifically, but do you envision keeping him in that closer role? Obviously, he started earlier in his career, but I mean, you don't break what's not broken. So.
No, he's our closer. Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be extremely hard to replace Matthews, Zavala, and Yovin's production. But when you look, at the end of the season numbers and maybe some behind-the-scenes stuff, is there anything that you're keying on trying to? I use the term replace loosely, but is there any number that comes up that you think you can, add a trio of guys to replace some of that production?
Well, I mean, you're losing your 2, 3, and 4 hitters, and they were really good. Before the season started, nobody really thought they were going to be as good as they ended up being. That's player development. That's the guys really buying in and really working hard to become the players that they were. So it'll be the same thing that we did last year with this new group, getting guys to buy into what we're doing, buy into their desires to get stronger and get in the weight room, and player development piece. There's a lot of encouraging pieces that have showed up to campus to replace some people, and time will tell. But there's some really, after one day of looks, there's some really intriguing pieces that have showed up to campus.
Who are going to be some of those pieces at first base in particular?
Well, Jacob Walsh from Las Vegas is really a physical kid, freshman out of Las Vegas, turned a lot of money down to be here at Oregon, and it looked like he turned a lot of money down today when we got a chance to see him for the first time on our campus. That was really intriguing. There's a transfer from South Carolina named Brennan Malone. He's got tremendous bat speed and power. He was offered a lot of money out of high school before he attended South Carolina, and he turned that money down to play college baseball. So he's a guy with a big upside. There's several other kids too that really are great pieces. Anson Arose, catcher. I think he was ranked as the second best catcher in the state of California last year as a freshman. He's in-house right now. That's a lot of fun for us to see amongst other guys.
Is he gonna? Do you view the catching position as open right now? I mean, in terms of because Jack, obviously we know what he brings defensively, but offensively it was tough.
Well, and Scanlon today looked way better than what we saw last year, which was great. He's going to need to be better with the other guys that are coming in now that are talented and really probably want that job. So does Jack. But nobody's got a job secure. I mean, you play your way into those jobs and you earn those jobs. And, a guy like Tanner Smith or Anthony Hall, who had really big summers, and there's a lot of buzz about them in the scouting worlds. You'd feel like those guys would be staples in your starting lineup. Josh Kasevich has got a ton of scouting buzz right now on him. You'd feel like those guys would be secure in your lineups, but even those guys are going to need to prove it to earn, starting time, playing time, and all that. Although, they would seem like the most likely guys to be in shoe-in to start at least early on.
Does right field start with Betcher and Ashford, or are there other guys in there?
There's a lot of guys out there right now to choose from. And so, Betcher's a good name. There's a lot of good names out there. It'll be a competitive look out there.
Finally having a Pac-12 baseball tournament, what does that mean to you?
I love it. It shortens the season, the regular season, by 1 week. And so getting our 56 games in to a 14-week season instead of a 15-week season poses some challenges. But I think the bottom line is this. The last weekend of the year, the Pac-12 has always been a conference that still has conference matchups occurring on the last week of the season. And all the other leagues when you turn the TV on, you can turn into their conference tournaments. And it's just a different element when you're watching a conference tournament versus watching a regular season contest between two teams. And I think that that's a huge step forward for our league. I think it's going to potentially even get an extra team into the league, into the postseason possibilities from our league. And I think it's going to be nothing but a win for our conference. And from an exposure standpoint, I think that's really going to help our league as well.
Who do you look to in the locker room wise when 12 and 21 in particular? And obviously I know rotation wise there's a collective effort for sure, but Robbie certainly set a tone in a lot of ways, I would say. Demeanor and general tenacity. Who do you look to take over the mantle in that way when you had guys, Gabe and Kenyon talking about the postseason being a thing and getting it, and Robbie being a guy who's never going to back down from anybody and doing that.
Yeah, if you were to start last year, that's a good question. We've got some real leaders in that locker room. Kasevich was a real leader for us last year, so was Mosiello, so was Summers. Those three guys were three of our biggest leaders, if not the biggest leaders in our clubhouse last year. And that's great because they're back. In addition to that, you're talking about, last year at this time, if I were to stand in front of a camera and say, yeah, we're going to be at the end of this year, be in a regional, playing the regional final game and finish second in the Pac-12, I would have gotten laughed off the stage and people would have probably been questioning my mental stability. And that's not happening. By the end of the year, we ended up doing those things and accomplishing those things. And so this year there's questions going in. There's always going to be questions going in, and I anticipate these guys answering the bell, and our objectives and our goals aren't going to change. They still are to be in postseason play. One of the goals is to win a Pac-12 conference. One of the goals is to get the College World Series and eventually win that College World Series. So those goals will stay intact. And with the losses, those are big losses, and our coaching staff has a lot of work to do to be able to replace those guys. Those are really good players.
What's your plans for fall ball by way of who you're playing and how many you're playing, and in terms of just general goals? I'm, again, assuming the rotation is part of it, but what are you looking to get out of fall ball?
Well, we're looking to, establish the rotation, get a better feel for our personnel. I think we're going to have in the neighborhood of 15 different scrimmages that occur throughout the fall, 5 weeks of 3 scrimmages a week type thing. We'll have a chance to play probably a couple of outside competition teams, probably junior colleges at this point to be able to come in, and we'll get a chance to be able to play a couple of games against them included on our 15 scrimmages, and then a lot of development time. And those development pieces we do a little bit differently some other schools in terms of our practice hours, and we take a lot of pride in that piece of it.
So you got a couple Churchill freshmen on the roster. Keeping local talent in, is that something I don't know how much of a priority that is for you, but what do you see out of those guys?
Well, it's a huge priority. Last year the local players in the state of Oregon almost would say carried us. There were some other guys that clearly contributed as well, but Zavala, Salem, Jovan, Portland, Alstrom, Eugene, amongst plenty others, and so we'll stick with that same theme with Colby Summers being an Oregon kid. Both Cho Tofty and Carson Leiden are out there working with the club. It's great to see those guys, both local kids, and there's a lot of other good local kids as well. Bennett Thompson's out there. He's a Southern Oregon kid. Jay Stoffel is a Roseburg kid, right-handed pitcher that's transferred in. He's exciting. He had a really big summer, and he brings a lot to the table, amongst other guys as well. So it's fun. I do like the local kids. I think they bring a different edge to the table, and we saw that last year in a Duck uniform.
Where are you guys scholarship situation-wise by way of in the mid-year? Could you add substantially if the marketplace dictated it and allowed, if somebody was there in December, January to bring in?
No, by rule, the only guys that we're allowed to bring in at the semester and be eligible to play would be a high school senior that reclassifies and graduates early. That would be the only type of guy that would do that, and we're always open to that possibility.
Even with the new one-time transfer clause?
That's correct.
No kidding.
It's a baseball-only rule.
Oh, nice. Well, lucky you.
Coach, just in general, how great is it to be back on the field and just to be back around baseball, especially in the fall?
Awesome. And we got our whole club out there, and they're working their tails off, and just to see the joy in people's faces again is fun. To be a part of a football game the other day, that's fun. The whole college experience. Just to have people moving around and the excitement of the University of Oregon athletic department. You can't match this. And I've been to some great schools, and you can't match what happens here at Oregon, and that's just a lot of fun for people to experience. And whether you're guys like myself that are a little older than the players or the players themselves, some of these kids, they've never even experienced what it's like on college football game day, or going to a ladies basketball game or a men's basketball game, or seeing the acro and tumbling team getting out there and getting after it with their practices. I mean, it's just awesome being here. I mean, that track team's only won like the 33rd national championship, and so for us to be a part of this ride, it's unbelievable. And so, all the way down to last weekend, being able to teach our guys just the class Coach Cristobal and his program has after they have a tremendous win, for him to have the poise to come out and say, no celebrating on their logo. That would be disrespectful. We do take a lot of pride in doing things here the right way and treating others with a great amount of respect. And winning's a big part of that as well. And so that was awesome to see Coach Cristobal and be able to teach off of that to our young people. That's what this thing's all about, and we're able to do that this fall. It's just been a blast so far, and we just started.